Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural podcast, PDX podcast, which I'm not sure if that's going to be the actual name or not, but that's what we're going with now. My name is Matthew Parks. Happy to host you today. I hope the day finds you well. So, let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about. This podcast is going to be talking about Portland, all things Portland. It's June 1st today. Still spring. Summer's almost here. It's a beautiful time in Portland right now. It's one of the best times of the year. It's not quite hot. We still get some rainy days, nice cloud coverage, but we do get the sun. Things are in bloom. Things are super green. Strawberry season is almost here. There's a lot of awesome things about Portland this time of year. And I feel like it's the perfect time to kick off the podcast here and start talking about all things Portland. Some of the upcoming topics in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about beer. We're going to talk about canning and fruit, foraging, gathering. I was thinking about maybe doing a real estate type podcast where maybe we talk about the different homes here in Portland. A lot of people right now are trying to move to the area. And homes are kind of expensive here, and there's a lot of people here, and traffic sucks, and there's a lot of things that, things that are not so attractive about Portland, but there are many, many attractive reasons to move here, and if you're in the right state of mind, you're the right type of person, you're bringing positive energy, it's definitely a place for you. I guess the biggest thing is, well, that I would say anyway, is that I wouldn't necessarily like the wrong people moving here. I know that sounds kind of silly to say out loud, but you know, there's a lot of people that bring negative energy and, you know, aren't really doing the Portland thing and aren't they're not the best for the city or the state even. Oregon has a very cool vibe to it, and it's got a very specific feel to it. And I don't know, I feel like someone who's maybe a native New Yorker who has that type of mindset, and I don't mean to stereotype, but just as an example, someone who's high strung and maybe, you know, not very relaxed, this might not be the place for them. Although we do have legal weed, so, you know, they could maybe just roll a blunt and chill the fuck out. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so today's episode, we're going to actually talk about hiking. Perfect weather to go out and hike today. We have a little bit of cloud coverage, but the sun is coming out from time to time. It's not rainy today. It's gorgeous out, and it's in the 70s. So, I mean, today would be a perfect day to go and take a hike, but instead I'm sitting in my garage recording this for you all. And we'll talk about some of the different hikes that I've done and some of the ones that I've heard about and want to do. And we'll kind of go from there. So a little bit of background on me. I moved to the state here last year. Originally came from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona to be specific. And the first time I came and visited Portland, I knew within the first couple of days that this is where I wanted to live. My story, I guess, is as follows. I came and visited for actually a different podcast that I used to do called Weeducated, and there was a conference that was in town. So my co-producer and I came to town to cover that conference. We had a friend here in town who kind of showed us around the city the first couple of days, and on that third day, I knew for a fact I wanted to move here. So I've been a musician for a lot of my life. And in Phoenix, the music scene is kind of interesting. There's a big music scene there, but there's groups of people who will hang out and go see the same bands over and over and over again. And you don't really get a whole lot of exposure to different groups or different bands. There's not a whole lot of synergy going on with the bands in town. And it's kind of silly to say, and it's just not that great. The metal scene is thriving there, or at least it was when I left. There's a lot of awesome bands that are in Phoenix, but they just it's hard for them to spread their wings because people are very close-minded when it comes to going out and trying new things there. So here in Portland, we went to a show by a band called Thousand Fuegos, and I don't know if they're still in town. I haven't heard anything about them since I've actually moved here, but they had a show at, well, you know what? I don't remember what the venue was. It was someplace that was upstairs, and I had a really cool stage. I feel like it was called like the Hidden Venue or the Secret Bar or something like that. But we went to that show, and there were people out on the dance floor actually dancing. There was this awesome vibe. Had one of the best beers I had ever had in my life up to that point. It was really my first experience with a craft beer, and it was just an enjoyable experience. So that was really what prompted me to want to move here. That specific experience, on top of the awesome food, the cool people, the low crime rate, which is something you don't see in Phoenix. There's definitely a lot of crime, and especially specific parts of the city. It's kind of scary sometimes to walk around. So anyway, decided I wanted to move here. Worked at it. Spent a couple of years just coming and visiting different parts, different times of the year, to make sure that it was something that I could deal with weather-wise. I had never been in snow before. I had been in the snow, but I'd never lived in a place where there was snow. And I didn't know about the rain, I guess, even though people had told me every single day when they heard that I wanted to move to Portland. Oh, you know it rains there, right? You know it rains. Yeah, I fucking know it rains there. It's the only thing people know about Portland for the most part, is that it fucking rains here. Anyway, I love the rain. So it really wasn't a thing for me to move to a place where it rained. Plus, in Phoenix, it hardly ever rains. And I was kind of done with the sun. So really, the fact that it rains was a selling point for me and not something that was going to hinder me from moving here. So that was one of the positive things. Anyway, my first year here, I lived in a city called Wilsonville. That's about halfway between Portland and Salem, going down the I-5. It's a tiny little podunk town. It's not... Don't get me wrong. Wilsonville's an all right place, but there was nothing about Wilsonville that I enjoyed that made me want to originally move to Oregon. So what I mean is... Okay, so there's 5 Starbucks in Wilsonville, but no local coffee shops, no small coffee shops, no one that really sources locally or brings in like good local coffee, which I love coffee. I'm drinking a delicious cup of French pressed Portland Coffee Roasters coffee at the moment. It's delicious, but there wasn't really any good coffee in Wilsonville, and I despise Starbucks. I think their roast is disgusting. That's my personal opinion. I don't expect you to follow my opinion or do what I do, but that's just how I feel about it. In Wilsonville, there's only a couple of, I guess what you would call local eateries, but for the most part, there's fast food there, some kind of bougie places, and just there aren't like cool little hole-in-the-wall places like you find here in Portland, or family-run places like you find here in Portland, or most of Oregon, I should say, for the western part of Oregon. I haven't really visited too much on the east, but those are some of the things that I really moved here for. Was more localized, more sustainable, more family friendly, or family owned, smaller type businesses. I feel like that's really where places thrive. Places like McDonald's, they're thriving because there's a gajillion of them. They're quick and easy, and it's there, so people go. But that's not really what I'm looking for. So that's what Wilsonville was. So my first year here, I came in March. It was still a little rainy. Last year was kind of interesting because we had a lot of sun pretty early. It wasn't a normal spring, from what I understand anyway, where it would be super rainy the entire spring. So I got to get out and I got to explore Oregon pretty much right away. And it was awesome. One of the first things I wanted to do was go out and hike a bunch of places and kind of get a feel for things and get out in the forest, something that we don't have in Phoenix, and really just kind of get some of that fresh air in me and get some exercise on my bones and get at it. So I went out and I bought a book that had different maps and at different places to go hike because I didn't know anything about the city, or the area rather, excuse me. And that book was really what got me started. It was called 60 Hikes Within 60 Miles. And I think it was the 5th edition. I have a copy of it right here. I'll take a picture of it and post it so that way you can all see what I'm talking about. But it's an excellent book. It's got some great hikes in it. Some of the stuff that really like introduced me to hiking around town, or around the area. I keep saying around town, but around the area is what I really mean. And it was just super cool. So I bought that book. I have another one now, which I found in Astoria, in this cool little bookshop there, which is called 100 Hikes in Northwest Oregon. in Southwest Washington, and that one is also a super cool book. I think it's a little more detailed than the 60 hikes within 60 miles, and some of the maps are a little bit more up to date. A little bit more up to date is probably the best way to put that. But yeah, the either book was really awesome. I could have ended up with either one, which obviously, like I said, I ended up with the 60 hikes within 60 miles one, and that one really served me well. I still use it even to this day. So, I guess a couple of things to talk about before we start talking about the different hikes. If you are planning on going hiking in the Pacific Northwest or in Oregon specifically, there's a couple of things you should probably know. It's wet here, and like I said before I moved here, everyone told me, oh, you know, it rains there. It does rain here. It rains here a lot, and it does get wet, and you can definitely get hypothermia if you get soaking wet clothes and it's cold outside. Definitely something you want to keep in mind. You want to make sure you have the proper equipment. You want to make sure that you're properly hydrated, maybe have some food on you. If you get stuck out in the woods overnight, you definitely don't want to be there alone and with nothing on you. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that I usually bring with me on my hikes. Definitely not a foolproof list. There are definitely better things you could take, but this really helps keep my pack light, and I will always tell someone where I'm going, so even if I did get lost, I know I'm usually not going to be stuck for more than a day or two, and I really feel like the things that I take with me are good for what I'm doing. So let me explain. First of all, definitely a good pair of wool socks, and I always keep an extra pair with me just in case. Wool is awesome because if it gets wet, it'll still keep you warm, and I've even gotten my socks so wet before that I've had to like wring them out because I was basically just sloshing around in my own shoes, but I wrung them out, put them back on, feet stayed warm the entire time. Good wool socks, definitely a must-have here. Shoes. So there's two schools of thought on what types of shoes you should wear when you go hiking. Some people wear hiking boots, the kind that, strap up real tight. They're leather or, some type of high quality material that are going to be more waterproof or weatherproof. But I don't really like those. A lot of times they're heavy, and I don't like carrying heavy shit on my feet when I'm walking around. I actually have a pair of like Nike running shoes, and they have super awesome grip on the bottom. The specific pair that I have, I think they're like Kiegers or something, Kieger. And I'm not even positive about that. That might not be what they are, but that's what I like wearing when I go hiking. They're super lightweight. They're not waterproof whatsoever, but that's where the wool socks come in. But they are light. They have excellent grip. And I'll talk about the grip here in a little bit. There's a specific hike that I went on where I learned that I really need a grip on my shoes. And they fit real nice and tight. Not too tight, but they do fit nice and tight on my feet. And I forget that I'm wearing them most of the time. And they're super comfy. And that's just what I prefer. It's really up to you. There's pros and cons to both. And it's really where you're going to be going. What type of hike you're going to be doing and what time of year would probably determine what would be the best pair of shoes to wear. That being said, depending on the weather again, you're probably going to wear pants. Probably a nice pair of jeans or khakis, maybe something with some like cargo pockets on it. Those would be the best things to wear going out. Now, if it's super hot out, which I mean here, super hot means maybe 100 degrees for like 10 minutes of the day. But it does get warm here. It gets super humid sometimes, and that can be a little bit rough. But in those instances, if you're just going to go do a day hike, a pair of shorts probably wouldn't do you too bad. But keep in mind also, in that rare instance where, hey, you might maybe be spending the night outside, if you did get lost or something, a pair of pants would definitely come in handy. So there's that. And always, too, I mean, if you got really hot and you're wearing a pair of pants, you could always roll them up a bit, too, and just make them into shorts. And then when you got cold, roll them back down. Boom, you got a pair of pants again. Again, probably a couple different schools of thought on that. I'm just telling you what I do when I go hiking. All right, so next, depending on what time of year it is, what type of weather, let's say it's summertime, t-shirt is perfectly acceptable. However, no matter what time of year it is, no matter where I'm going, no matter what I'm doing, I always bring a jacket with me, even if I'm throwing it in my backpack, or strapping it to my backpack or my pack. A nice weatherproof, warm jacket. Now, my original jacket, and subsequently every jacket that I bought since I've been to Oregon, I got from Goodwill. Pro tip: if you go to Goodwill, you're going to be able to find cheap jackets for the type of weather that we have here in Oregon. I came from Arizona, and the heaviest jacket I had was like a hoodie, like a zip-up hoodie. That won't cut it here. It's definitely not waterproof. It's cotton. It's going to get cold. It's going to get soggy. Definitely not the best thing to carry with you 100%, or I guess 365 days a year would be a better way to say that. Weatherproof jacket. A windbreaker is really nice. I found really nice like North Face jackets at Goodwill, which was actually one of my first ones that I got. I've got two different ones now. There's one that I really stick by that's more of a windbreaker type with insulation in it, and it's waterproof for the most part. That one I got, I think, for like $20, and it's normally, I'm sure, like $100, $120 jacket at least. But I got it for $20 at Goodwill, and it was awesome. And it's maybe a little bit big for me, but hey, I'll be happy with a big jacket for saving $80 at least. So yeah, go check out your local Goodwill. That's where you're gonna find some awesome jackets. And like I said, always make sure you have one with you when you go out hiking. It's gonna be vital if you do get stuck in the woods overnight, or if the weather changes on you all of a sudden, or you just need to stay dry. It's gonna be a vital part of your pack. All right, let's talk about the pack. So when I first started going hiking, I used to carry a big backpack, one that would like strap up across the belly, and it was just heavy even when there was nothing in it. Probably a good pound or two with nothing in it. And then I would pack it down with a bunch of stuff, and it would get even heavier. Well, that was kind of counterintuitive to what I wanted to be doing when I was hiking. I like to just go out in the woods if I could, and I was not a worrywart, and just did what I did. Then I would go out with nothing, honestly. I mean, I'd go out with my clothes that I'm wearing, but I wouldn't even bring a pack, maybe a bottle of water. That's really how I'd want to. But I am a worrywart, so I think about all the worst case scenarios, and I was bringing a pack full of stuff the first couple of times I went hiking. Well, then after that, the first couple of times it was summertime, so I found a pack that was probably got from Walmart or Target or somewhere, but it was a Coleman pack that had one of those Camelback things in it. So I had like the hose that I could drink the water out of. That thing was awesome. I would fill that thing up, and I think it would carry about 2 liters of water, usually about a gallon, actually, now that I think about it, because I'd go buy a gallon of water at the store and just fill it up on my way there, so it was nice and cold. But that was that was what I was taking for a long time. Now, the drawback to that backpack was it was super light. That's not a drawback. Hang on. Let me backpedal a little bit. There are a couple of drawbacks, pros and cons to that backpack. Pros, I could carry a ton of water with me. And if I ran out of water, here in Oregon, it's not hard to find a stream or something. We'll talk about that here in a minute, what you should do with water from a stream. But worst case scenario, I could fill it up if I needed to, or get extra water for it if I needed to, or fill it up again if I needed to. That particular pack also had straps on it across the chest and the belly, which I liked because I had like a utility, a multi-tool. Sorry, that was the word I was looking for. A multi-tool that had like a belt loop on it. So I would just put that in the top strap, and I would wear it basically on my chest. Kept things off my pants. It didn't weigh down my belt or weigh down my pants, which is a huge pet peeve for me. I hate when my pants like start to sag and I gotta pull them up, and then they start to sag and then I gotta pull them up, and I don't know if this is just a guy thing, but then my boxers get all scrunched up, which I'm sure obviously boxers for the most part are probably just a guy thing, but anyway, they'd get all scrunched up, and then I'd have to like loosen my belt, fix my pants, and this is just an ongoing problem when you wear a belt, and you don't have a specific size belt, or if it's not one of the ones that kind of clasp down like a military style belt or something like that, it's just it's a big mess. Anyway, enough about that. I could take some of that extra weight off of my pants and off my belt by throwing that on the pack, on the strap that went across the chest. Also, I like those types of backpacks anyway because they help just redistribute the weight of the pack, and that's awesome. It makes you feel like you don't have quite as much going on your back, or especially for me, it's about my lower back. It's my lower back where I usually feel pain if I'm carrying a heavy pack after a couple hours. Okay, so those are some of the pros. Cons about that type of backpack: super tiny. There's nothing else really you can carry. I would throw. I actually got pretty good and engineered a couple of different ways to actually fit a whole bunch of stuff in that backpack. But for the most part, you can really only carry your water that's in that camelback part. Anything you can strap to the front. It did have like a elastic strap on the back, which is usually where I carried my jacket, and that was about it. It was kind of a pain in the butt to not be able to carry a bunch of stuff. But again, it was summertime, so I was really thinking about water mostly, and that's all I really needed to carry, for the most part. But again, I always have my pack of sock or my extra pair of socks with me. I always have my jacket with me, and a couple of power bars, and I think that was about it that I would be able to carry in that backpack. I would always also, in any one of my packs, this is kind of a little side note, little bonus information, carry a couple of dog do bags or bags for dog poop. I have a dog. She goes with me. Any hike I go on, she goes with me. And you got to pick up after them, even if, so this kind of sucks, but if you take your dog out and you get, a mile or two away from a garbage can and they poop, you should really pick it up. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for the other animals. And it's just gross to look at. And here in Oregon, it's gorgeous. So that's another thing, why I don't want to go out hiking and see a whole bunch of piles of dog poop. At the same time, I don't want to go out hiking and see a whole bunch of people who had picked up their dog poop, but then just left the bag sitting there. That's just as bad, if not worse, because now there's litter and dog poop there. Like, it just sucks. So if you have a dog and you take them out hiking and you bring those bags with you, pack them out. I know it sucks and I know it's kind of gross, but do it. Otherwise, don't bring your dog. I mean, that's on you. That's not on anyone else. So that's just a little side note. I always had some dog bags with me. Now, thing about the dog, or having the dog with me when I hike, is I always thought, and I never actually got around to doing this, but I always wanted to, and I know there's some companies out there that make them, but I always wanted to get her or make her a pack for herself, like one that would really just carry a couple of things, maybe like a little dish for water, maybe an extra little bottle of water, and most importantly, a pocket on it. So if we did have to pack out like some dog do bags that were full, she could carry them. I wouldn't have to carry them next to my power bars, which, even though everything is packaged up and in a bag or whatever, like, there's something weird about walking around with a bag of dog poop right next to something I'm going to eat. So if you have your dog and that's something you're worried about or you're thinking about, look into that. There are companies, like I said, that make the packs for dogs, or I was just going to make my own. I still haven't gotten around to it because hiking season really just started again for this year. And I probably will get into one if I find an awesome one, or if I make an awesome one, I will be sure to let everyone know, take pictures of it, step-by-step details, at least as much as I can if I end up making it myself. A couple other quick things about dogs on hikes. There are certain places, certain hikes that dogs are not allowed on. Now, don't tell anyone, but I have taken my dog on a few of those hikes where technically you're not supposed to have your dog with you. I'm sure there's reasons why you're not supposed to, and I'm a big jerk for taking her on them, but she loves to hike. She's a super good hike dog. But again, I probably shouldn't have because, it says not to. So, again, there's probably reasons for that. I don't know what the reasons are off the top of my head. I'm sure you can go on the internet and look them up. I'm sure I could go on the internet and look them up, but up to this point, there's been a couple that I've taken around that I really shouldn't have. But keep that in mind. You always want to check first to find out if it's something that your dog can go on. Now, also, there was one hike, and we'll talk about this hike in a little bit, but Larch Mountain, going down to Multnomah Falls. That particular hike I took her on, and I kind of wished I hadn't. It is a super rocky hike. There's a ton of rocks. It's really, I felt like it was kind of tough on her, like her pads and even her nails and stuff. Like, going back and thinking about it again, I don't think I would take her on that hike again, unless I brought, like, I don't know, maybe invested in some of those little booties or something. She didn't really seem to mind so much, but I just felt bad having her on that hike and having a whole bunch of rocks. I didn't think that she was super comfortable, but again, she's an awesome dog, so she didn't complain. All right, so another thing about dogs are, I think this might be the last thing that I can think of right now, and I'll actually read off a couple of things here in a moment from one of the books that have some rules about hiking, or I guess just some general courtesy things about hiking. But if you're ever on a hike with a dog, it's good to keep them on leash, especially if they're not well trained. Most hikes you don't have to keep your dog on a leash. Most hikes you can let them off the leash. My dog is awesome. I could let her off the leash 100% of the time, no matter where I'm at, and she would always stay right by my side, listen to my commands, do all sorts of, or not go off and do all sorts of things, or like run off. I really don't have to worry about my dog. She is awesome. Some of you out there who may have a dog who's a little wily, maybe one that goes after other dogs, maybe one that jumps or like runs away. Maybe you want to keep them on the leash the whole time, or like test it out. Maybe give them a few minutes off the leash, a few minutes on, a few minutes off, a few minutes on, and do it like that. Some of the places that I have definitely kept her on the leash are places where there's like a steep hill, where I was maybe kind of worried, and I'm not so worried because she's pretty sure-footed, but if I really thought about it, maybe she could slip, and I don't want to have to go down there and get her, one. And two, I don't want her to get hurt. So I would keep her on the leash, and I have one of those retractable ones where it can get super long, like up to like 15 feet, or you can keep it super short. It's got the little click button on it. And that way she could kind of explore, but if she slipped off the hill, I could lock it real quick, and she may still get hurt a little bit, but I don't think it'd be as bad as if she went down the entire hill, and I might be able to like reel her back in a little bit. So that's one place that I would always keep her on the leash, is when I was kind of sweating the cliff side or the hill side of the trail. Also, when she first started hiking, she wasn't very well acquainted with other dogs. She was more of a lone wolf. So whenever I saw another dog, I would usually put her back on the leash. She's gotten super good about it now, and she for the most part just ignores other dogs and other people, as opposed to what she used to do. She would just kind of cower away. But that would be another time I would throw her on the leash, is when there'd be another dog around. Not so much anymore, but back when she first started, again, I've got her super well trained now. She's the best hiking dog ever. All right, so we were talking about equipment, and I kind of went off on a tangent there about my dog. I feel like the dog equipment is also a big part of this, so just real quick, I would always bring extra water for her. I would always bring a little dish or something that she could drink water out of, and I would always bring like a couple of extra little snacks, like Denta Bones or Busy Bones or something that she could snack on if she needed to. I know she's a dog, and she could probably forage for a squirrel or something, if worst case scenario. I mean, I wouldn't want her to, but I'm just saying, she's an animal. She could probably figure it out if we had to spend the night in the woods or something. But in any case, I would take that stuff with me too. Always have my leash, always have my dog do bags, and that was it. Now that I think about it, I maybe would want to start packing like a little poncho or something for her, something along those lines that could help keep her dry if she needed to. But we're pretty good about our hikes. We're pretty smart about it, so I haven't up to this point. If I think of anything else for dogs, I'll definitely let you know, but that's usually all I bring for her. She's an animal, so she pretty much has all the things that she needs. Speaking of poncho, that's also another thing I always keep in my pack. Even though I have that jacket that is pretty well waterproofed and keeps me warm, I always bring a poncho, because here in Oregon, here in the Pacific Northwest, it rains a lot. And I wouldn't want to be stuck out in like a super drenchy type rainstorm or something and get soaked. So that's always in my pack. I've never had to use it, but it's there. All right. So we talked about water. I always had a couple of extra power bars that I would throw in there, or if you have dietary restrictions, they do have, I believe, dairy-free ones or vegan ones, and I know for a fact that there are gluten-free ones. They sell the gluten-free ones at Costco. You can get like a huge pack of them. They're not the tastiest thing, but if you ask me, or if it was my opinion, I don't think the power bars are that tasty either. They're just calories in case I need them. My favorite ones that I found are the Odwalla bars. I don't have any dietary restrictions, knock on wood, but The Oddwalla ones were my favorite, and I usually grab the banana nut bread ones, or I think that's what they were. That's what they tasted like. They might have just been banana nut or something, but those were my favorite. There's also a super berry one that was awesome, but I found that those tend to give me heartburn. Some of the banana nut one was the only one that I could rely on 100% of the time. I would feel fine with, but especially power bars, for some reason they give me heartburn. And on a hike, if you're not feeling good and you get like a couple miles into a hike, and then all of a sudden you get a case of heartburn, you didn't bring Tums, or like you're just not feeling good, that's the worst. Let me tell you right now, it's hard to enjoy a hike when you have something wrong with you. And we'll talk about that here in another couple of minutes too, on one of the hikes where yeah, we'll get into that here in a moment. So we covered food, water, a knife. That's another thing to always bring with you. You may not ever need it, but just throw it in a pack. It's always good to have. There's a million uses for a knife. I carry around like a military style knife, or like a hunting style knife, and that's got a million uses to it. But I also have a multi-tool that's got a little blade on it, and I take that with me wherever I go to. I always have a little bit of paracord with me in case I need any rope or anything like that. The multi-tool is an awesome thing to have. It has like a saw blade on it. If you needed to saw something, I never have needed to, at least out on the hikes. But there's another couple of things. And I feel like that's just about it. I probably missed something, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head all the things that I have. But food, water, socks, the poncho or a jacket, the knife, and the power cord. Those or paracord, excuse me, are really the biggest things that you, or not the biggest things, but the most important things you want to take with you. If I think of anything else that is also important, and dog stuff if you have your dog with you. But anyway, if I think of anything else, I'll definitely make sure to mention it. All right, so one of the books I have, the 100 Hikes in Northwest Oregon, has a little section here on things you should bring, and I'm just going to read this off. Always bring a pack with the 10 essentials: a warm, water-repellent coat, drinking water, extra food, a knife, matches in a waterproof container, a fire starter like a butane lighter or a candle, a first aid kit, a flashlight, a map, topographic if possible, and a compass. And always make sure, this is also in the book, before leaving on a hike, tell someone where you're going, and so they can alert the county sheriff and begin a search and rescue if you don't return on time. So there you go. There were a couple of things that I did forget, like the fire starter, which I do usually keep in my pack. I usually bring a lighter with me, and a first aid kit, which is definitely a good thing to have, and a flashlight, which is also something I always usually carry but just kind of forgot about. So I'm glad I looked at this, and I'm glad I read that off. One other thing in the book I was talking about is the courtesy on the trail. Now this has we were talking about the dogs earlier. I'm just going to read off these things here. And these are just rules of etiquette, really, that are things that you should keep in mind when you're out hiking. Don't pick flowers. Leave no litter. Eggshells and orange peels can last for decades, so even those try and pack out if you can. Step off the trail on the downhill side when a horse passes. This one kind of made me think about it for a few minutes. When I first read it, and then I realized why. And I'm more of a simple person. I'm a big dummy, so that's why I didn't really know right off the top of my head why. But if you force the horse to go on the downhill side, the horse could slip a lot easier than you can. So it's best for you to go on the hillside or the downhill side. Let the horse pass on the safe side, and there you go. You're both good to go. You're both going to be safe, including the rider on that horse. Do not shortcut switchbacks. All right, so this is a huge problem here in Oregon, and I'm sure other places where there's hiking as well, but there are switchbacks. The switchbacks are there for a reason. It's because you don't want to climb 1,000 feet in 1,000 feet. What I mean by that is you don't want to go straight up vertically up a mountain, right? You don't want to be at a 45-degree angle going up a mountain. It sucks. And I don't know if 45 degrees is really a good or accurate example to use there, but you don't want to be going straight up a mountain or going like super steep up a mountain. Your cardio can't deal with it. Your legs can't deal with it. It's super unsafe. So there's switchbacks in place. And what a switchback is the big like S-type trail that goes up the side of a mountain or up a big hill or something. Usually you'll go a couple 100 feet one way, do a little U-turn, and then keep going up another couple 100 feet, and then do a little U-turn, and it kind of S's around and snakes up the side of a hill. Now, sometimes you could be going up a hill that's maybe, I don't know, let's just use 1,000 feet as an example. You're going to climb 1,000 feet in elevation. Well, that's really not that far when you think about it. If you think about walking 1,000 feet in a straight line, that's not that much. But sometimes there's switchbacks where, I mean, you can be going for like 1.5 miles just to go that 1,000 feet. And again, that may not be the best example, but anyway, if you go out pretty much anywhere here in Oregon and you're on a switchback trail or a part of a trail where there's switchbacks, you'll notice that a lot of people have created little shortcuts and gone in between the switchbacks and basically tried going straight uphill or made little shortcuts. As awesome as that sounds and as attractive as that is to follow, it's not good. It's terrible for the trail, causes landslides, causes the trail to sometimes be unusable. I mean, if there's a landslide on the trail and it's caused by a shortcut there, then no one can use the trail just so you could get around a little quicker. Just deal with the switchbacks. It gets you more exercise. You feel more like a badass when you actually do it. Switchbacks suck on cardio themselves, and they're super rough. Well, rough in the sense that like it takes a lot of gusto to get up a big long switchback trail. Trust me, I know here in the Pacific Northwest we have a lot of elevation gains. It sucks, but it's well worth it, and to keep the trail intact, it's even better. All right, so here's some more of the courtesy on the trail. These are for backpackers specifically. Leave no trace camping is essential to protect the landscape and to preserve a sense of solitude for others. The most important rule: camp out of sight of lakes and trails, build no campfire, cook on a backpacking stove, wash 200 feet from any lake or stream, camp on duff, rock, or sand, never on meadow vegetation, do not move rocks, dig trenches, or build camp furniture, pack out garbage and toilet paper, don't burn or bury it. So there's probably some other things to keep in mind out on the trail that are not in this book here. Some of the ones that I can think of: be friendly out on the trail. I know that sounds silly, but you know, if you're passing someone, a nice little nod or hi is awesome. You're both out in the woods, you're having a awesome time out on a hike. Why not be friendly? Don't be an asshole. I've run into people before where, you know, you walk by, you say hi, or you just give them a nice little wave and they totally ignore you. What a dick thing to do. What a dick thing to do. Smoking out on the trails. So two schools of thought on this. One, smoking cigarettes on the trail is kind of a dick thing to do, period. I used to smoke cigarettes. I don't anymore. I've never smoked on the trail. I used to take my vaporizer out on the trail, like my little e-cigarette or electronic cigarette, but I have since stopped using that as well, so I haven't taken that on the trail for a long time. Also, probably not the coolest thing to do, but definitely a lot better than smoking a cigarette. And here's why. I actually have good reason why I feel like that's a lot better than smoking a cigarette. One, cigarettes fucking smell. They're gross. They're stinky. They're hard for other people to deal with. Sometimes you have to deal with breathing them in. And you can't just put it out right away. Or, well, you can, but most people don't just put out their cigarette when someone walks by and then light it back up or whatever. So you have a whole cigarette. If you walk by somebody, someone's going to have to deal with that eventually. The e-cigarette, I can puff it when I want and then stop when I'm walking by somebody. Also, it doesn't smell like shit. Also, it's not really going to harm anyone else. But again, I don't smoke the e-cigarette anymore, so even that, I guess I can't really speak for. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I definitely smoked my e-cigarette out on the trails. Now, the laws say, I believe, or the rules of the parks and stuff say that you shouldn't smoke anything out on the trails, and that includes e-cigarettes or vaporizers. Now, here is something that I may or may not do on trails. I won't say for certain, but smoking weed. You're not supposed to smoke on the trails, on any of like the state property or state trails, anything like that, any of the state parks, I should say. You're not supposed to smoke at all. Now, if you have a pipe with you and you smoke a bowl, I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. I love the smell of it. It's not going to bother me. You really shouldn't. You should probably do your best to try and keep it hidden or not smoke around other people. I would recommend maybe if you're going to smoke a joint to go to a secluded area to do that, not just do it open on the trail. Then other people don't have to deal with it. But there's definitely nothing wrong with smoking some weed while you're hiking. It's awesome. And that's all I'm going to say about that, except for always make sure that you're keeping track of your fire. You're putting out your joints if you have a joint, and you're making sure that they're out and not going to start a fire. Same thing with your pipes or whatever you bring out on the trail. Make sure that you tamp out your bowl and that there's no risk for a fire. All right. So that's all I can really think about for prep work and stuff like that. You've prepared to go out on the trail. You kind of know all your courtesy things. You kind of have a good idea of what you should bring with you. Let's talk about some of the different hikes that I've been on. Obviously, I haven't been on every single hike that you can go on, but I've been on quite a few, and I've picked out some of my favorites here to talk about. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is the Ape Caves. These are... Well, I shouldn't say these. It is a cave that is up by Mount St. Helens in Washington. If you go online, you can just look up the Ape Caves, and that's ape like a gorilla, APE, the Ape Caves. And this is a super cool hike. It's more of a spelunking trip, and you have to bring some special equipment with you, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but it's awesome. I think it's like 1.5 miles. It might even be like closer to 2 miles, 2.5. I don't think it's any longer than that when you go into the lower caves. There's two parts to it. There's the upper caves and the lower caves. The upper caves, anyone can go in. I don't think you can go in if you're like in a wheelchair or something, or where something... I don't really know how to word this, but if you're disabled, I guess, in a certain way, there are stairs. There's no elevator, so it might be kind of tough to get into the caves themselves. But the upper cave, anybody could walk them if you're able-bodied. Doesn't matter really how old you are. I've seen like 5-year-olds up there. It's completely straight. There's no like ups and downs, no like rocks to climb over, no scary like caves to go down in or anything like that. The upper caves are awesome. However, I've gone down into the lower caves, and that's where most people go when they go into the Ape Caves. So the Ape Caves are, I think they were carved out via like lava. It's from the volcano is how they were formed. And I'm not a scientist. I'm just a big dummy. So I'm not going to say how exactly they were formed, because I don't really know. I just know that it had something to do with the volcano. Anyway, the lower caves. So we're talking about some special equipment. Before you go into either the upper or the lower caves, you will definitely need a flashlight. A headlamp is definitely more along the lines of something you should bring. You can find those for pretty cheap at like Target or Walmart. I'm sure outdoors stores, things like that. But a headlamp is something you definitely want. And at the very, very least, a flashlight. Now, the headlamp you'll probably want for the lower caves, because you're going to need your hands for some parts of it where you're going to be climbing, doing things like that. And it's best to have your hands free in case you slip or fall or anything like that. Plus, you can't lose your headlamp for the most part. You can't like drop it down in a crevice or something. So a headlamp is definitely a smart thing to bring. Now, earlier, I was talking about how there was a certain hike that I went on where I needed grip on my shoes, or it made me realize how much I needed grip on my shoes. This is that hike. The Ape Caves was that hike where I realized I definitely needed some like grip and some traction on my shoes. Before this hike, this was actually the hike that switched everything around for me. Before this hike, I would just wear a pair of DCs, and they were kind of like skater shoes for the most part, but they laced up real well. They weren't like loose on my feet or anything. They were good for hiking, but they didn't have the best grip on the bottom. Which I know sounds kind of weird, because you'd think skater shoes, you'd think they would be kind of grippy, but they're not at all. So the reason that I needed the grip for this, or I should have had the grip for this one, is the whole hike, the entire thing, is wet or moist, or not necessarily slippery, but there's definitely moisture in the air, moisture on the rocks. And in certain parts, it can be kind of slippery as long as, and if you're not sure-footed, or if you're just running through there, you're definitely going to fall on your ass. So after this, I definitely got some grippy shoes, and things have been much better ever since. So with the ape caves, I went on it. My buddy Scotty went on it, and we took two of his kids. One was 14, one was I think 11, and then my daughter went with us, and she was I think 9 at the time. And they all did it just fine. I don't think any of them could have done it by themselves without an adult, is what I mean, especially for the rock wall, which we'll talk about here in a second. But if you bring a pretty sure-footed kid who has been on hikes before, I don't really know how to word this politically correct, but who isn't a dipshit and isn't going to do stupid things, they're probably going to be just fine. They're probably going to have a great time doing it. It's an awesome hike. It's totally fun. You definitely feel awesome when you're done doing it, because it's definitely an adventure. So the hike starts out, it's pretty flat, pretty straight, but not long you end up at like a hill of rocks that you have to climb up and over. And there are a few of these throughout the hike on the ape caves, or in the ape caves, I should say. So these are super slippery. They're super jagged. You could definitely get hurt on them. You want to be careful. I can't stress that enough. This hike is not an easy hike. It's not for someone who's never hiked before. If you're claustrophobic, you're not going to like it. You're not like in super confined spaces. There are a couple parts where you're kind of tight and snug in there, but for the most part, it's wide open. But there's a lot of safety concerns on the ape caves, or in the ape caves. Biggest one being slipping, falling, breaking an ankle, getting cut, breaking any kind of bones, I guess. There's a lot of things you got to think about. So definitely do some research before you go go in the ape caves, especially if you're going into the lower caves. There's some. It's probably the most hardcore hike that I've been on, as far as I could have gotten hurt if I was being a dumbass. So you go up and down these rock hills a couple of times, and then you come to what's called the rock wall. Now, I can only imagine what it was like before, but now, or at least when I was there a year ago, there was a little rope there. And this is basically like, people say it's like a 6-foot wall. Some people say it's like an 8-foot wall. What it really is it's like 10 to 12 feet. And I know that sounds a little silly, but well, I mean, I guess it sounds silly when people are like, it's 6 or 8 feet, but it's really not. It's way bigger than that. The vertical part of it is, maybe 6 feet, maybe 8 feet, but then it's not like it's just like a flat surface right after that. It still is kind of at an incline, and really, before you're out of any sort of, I guess, danger, I feel is more like 10 to 12 feet. And when I say danger, I just mean that it's a little slippery. If you did slip and like fall back or something, you're gonna have a bad time. It's not easy. Like I said, there is a rope there now, so you can kind of hold onto the rope. You can kind of climb. There's only 1 foothold that only gets you like a couple feet off the ground. It's not easy. The kids couldn't have done it on their own. We definitely had to boost the kids. My buddy Scotty was able to climb up there and then help. As I was boosting the kids up, he was able to grab their hand, and then I was the last one up, so I had to kind of get up a little bit, and then actually, because Scotty was up there, he helped he grabbed my hand and then kind of helped me get up to the top. But it was tough. I don't know if I would have done it on my own, or if I even could have done it on my own. I really don't know, because I wasn't on my own, but that's definitely a spot to keep in mind. I had a buddy also who told us about this hike. His name is Andy, and he went on this hike, and he said that he spent, I think he said he spent like a half hour trying to get up this thing, and he had people boosting him, and he had a hard time getting up there. I can imagine a lot of people that I know would have a hard time getting up there, and I'm not saying that I'm any better than any of them or whatever, just that I'm I'm a little bit more decent, I guess, at climbing. But yeah, I can totally see how it'd be tough. And again, I don't even know if I could do it on my own. So do a little bit of research, see if there's pictures of it, see if you can kind of get an idea of what it is before you go. That's the hardest part of this hike, is going up that rock wall. Now, there's two different things you can do in the ape caves. You can start out at the mouth of the cave, which is what we did, and go what I would call up the cave. I don't know if it's actually an incline, but it felt like we were going up instead of down. But basically, you start at the mouth of the cave, and then you walk all the way to the end, and then you hike back through the forest back to like the parking lot, basically. That's the way we went, and that's where you have to climb up the wall. There is another thing you could do, the complete reverse of that. You could walk the trail all the way to the end of the cave, which also obviously has a mouth, but go to that end of the cave and go back the other way, which in that instance, you'd be going down the rock wall. I felt one way about it. Scotty felt another way. I feel like if you went down the rock wall, it would be a little safer than going up the rock wall. My thought on this is you could kind of slide for the most part if you needed to. My thought on it was that you could kind of slide if you needed to, like down the rock. Now, there are jagged rocks down at the bottom from what I remember, so you'd have to be pretty careful about your footing when you do like land or when you get to the bottom. But then you could also possibly go down with the cord, like walking backwards a little bit and just going slow. I feel like that would be the easier way to go. Don't take my word for it. I'm not a professional, but that's just how I felt. Scotty is pretty good at rock climbing, period, so he felt like going up it was way safer, and he felt way more comfortable about it that way. I guess you'd have to see it and decide for yourself, read up on it, do some research, see how you feel about it. So once you get up the rock wall is where it gets a little bit claustrophobic. There's a couple of spots where you kind of have to like jimmy your way through. You're gonna get a little, not necessarily stuck in any case, but you're gonna get like pretty close quarters, where you're gonna have to kind of squeeze through. And I can imagine that a bigger person might have a little bit of trouble getting through there. And if, like I said, if you're claustrophobic, it's going to be a little bit of a tough time for you. It gets pretty cramped up in there, and one of the spots, I'm not even that claustrophobic, but there's one spot where there's basically like a rock that has come down. It's a huge rock. It's like part of a mountain, that you're basically going under. And if for some reason there was a shift there, which I mean, I think it's been there for 60 years or something. There was some dude on the trail there in the cave who said it had been there for at least 30 years. He'd been coming there and it hadn't moved an inch. But when I thought about it and when I was actually going under it, I definitely had that thought like, man, if this moved at all, it would crush me immediately and just squish me. Once you get out of there, it's pretty smooth. Once you get through that little tight space there, it's pretty smooth sailing. You end up getting to a spot where you can kind of see some light coming out the end, which is interesting because up to that point you're just using your headlamp or your flashlight. You can totally tell that it's fake or artificial light, and then you see some actual real sunlight and everything looks super cool. One thing I would totally recommend doing, especially if it's not on a crowded day, is like halfway through or like part of the way through, when you're in a spot where you know it's totally like dark and like if there's not a whole lot of people around, stop for a minute, sit down maybe even, and turn your light off and just listen and look for a minute, because it's going to be pitch black. And I mean like the type of pitch black where like even closing your eyes doesn't really do it justice. Like it is just pure black. You can't see anything. And if it's quiet too, it's super cool. You can hear like the water drips. And it's just really relaxing, really awesome. If I had more time that day, or if I wasn't with so many people, I might have even spent a good like 10-15 minutes just sitting there in the dark by myself, kind of listening and I guess meditating and doing my thing there. I feel like it would be awesome. And even the couple minutes that we did do it was awesome. Be sure once you climb out, that you go the correct way. I wasn't about to say I feel like when you go out of the cave you're going to go to your left back to the parking lot, but don't listen to that. That's just my intuition from what I remember, and it may not even be correct. Just go the way you came, basically, like follow the cave. You'll be able to figure it out. It's not hard. There's a path there. you should be able to figure it out. Worst case scenario, if you come out of the cave, you don't know how to get back, go back into the cave and go the way you came. That would probably be my best advice. All right, so that's the ape caves. Keeping up with an old Ouija-cated tradition here, we're going to take a quick break and actually play a song for everybody. This song is called The Hop, and it's by a group called Radio Citizen. Enjoy. Next one I'm going to talk about is one of my favorites, is Larch Mountain. Larch Mountain, the trail on Larch Mountain, I should say, was opened up, I believe, with the historic Columbia Highway, which is out in the gorge, the Columbia River Gorge. And if you've never been out there, it is beautiful. It's one of my favorite places in Oregon to be. That's out where like Multnomah Falls is. It's out where like all the waterfalls are, I should say, for the most part. There's the Crown Point Lookout and the Vista House. Just some really cool sightseeing. And like I said, it's gorgeous out there. So even if you're not going hiking, I definitely recommend going and checking it out. The hike, like I said, opened up with the historic Columbia Highway, or the trail did. And what it is, it's from Multnomah Falls Lodge, which if you've ever been to Multnomah Falls, it's like there's the bridge there or whatever, and you're like right down by that lodge where you can eat, and they have the fudge shop down there, stuff like that. So basically from there all the way to the top of Larch Mountain, which I wish I had a way of describing it better, but if you know where Larch Mountain is, or if you know what Larch Mountain is, it has a very distinct shape up at the very top of it, which you can see from lots of parts of town. And if you know what it looks like, you can pick it out from pretty much anywhere. But that's the top of Larch Mountain. So you're basically going from Multnomah Falls Lodge up to that tippy top point, and then you can even walk back down. It's 14 miles altogether, I think. It might even be 15, because I think it's like 7.5 or something one way. The way I did it, I drove my car to the top of Larch Mountain, where they have the lookout up there. And if you've never been to that lookout, oh my God, go to that lookout. On a clear day, I think you can see 5 of the volcanoes, all the way out to Rainier. You can see St. Helens, you can see Hood. I think Jefferson and Adams are all the ones you can see out there. Don't quote me on that, but I think you can see 5 of them. Plus, you can see all the way in pretty much to Portland. And it's the coolest thing I've ever seen, I think, in my life. On a clear day, go up to the top of Larch Mountain. I forget what the lookout is called up there, but if you look up Larch Mountain, you can figure it out real quick. Google it. Anyway, I drove my car to the top of that, set up a shuttle. I actually had my cousin who was going to meet me down at Multnomah Falls once I got done with the hike. But basically, I walked down from the top of Larch Mountain to Multnomah Falls, and then she drove me back up to my car, and that's how I did it. Obviously, you could park at Multnomah Falls, walk all the way up, walk all the way down, or you could park at the top of Larch, walk all the way down, walk all the way up, or you can do a reverse shuttle that I did, park at Multnomah, have someone pick you up at the top of Larch. There's tons of ways you can do it, but if you've never done it before, or maybe you're a novice hiker, I actually wouldn't recommend it if you're a novice. I would definitely say don't ever make this one your very first hike. It's a toughie, and this is the one that I was talking about where I took my dog, and there's a lot of rocks. Some of it's kind of slippery. There's a spot where there was a landslide, where for like half a second I thought maybe I wasn't on the trail, because it doesn't look like you're on the trail. I figured it out real quick. It wasn't too scary of a moment, but yeah, you definitely have to know your stuff, and you have to know where you're going. There's also a lot of people get lost up there every year, and search and rescue has to come find them, because I think there's 2 different spots where you can go one way or the other. There might even be a 4-way intersection at one of the points, but every year inevitably someone takes a wrong turn on this trail, and they end up having to search and rescue for them. In the summertime, the late summer, there's a ton of huckleberries up there. You can see up at the very top of Larch once you're up there and you kind of start the hike. In recent years, I think within the past decade, there was a fire up there. So if you know anything about huckleberries, you know that where there's fire, there soon will be huckleberries. So there's a ton of those up there. And once you're up there, like I said, you can totally see where there was a fire. Kind of cool to see. It's really desolate up there. My buddy Andy, who's a big Sasquatch person, thinks that Sasquatch is somewhere up there. I will let you decide what you think about that, but it's really cool. It's really desolate. Not a whole lot of people, especially at the top of Larch. Sometimes you'll run across other hikers, or sometimes there'll be people right at the lookout, but if you start walking down that trail, you're pretty good chance you're not going to see anybody. Depending on time of year, depending on the weather, stuff like that. That's another thing to keep in mind, is this trail closes in the winter time, because the top of Larch Mountain gets snow, it gets icy, it's definitely dangerous. I haven't been up there when it's closed down, obviously, but I've thought about it before, and I could even see, like, I'm not a daredevil by any means, but I'm definitely the type of person that's like, well, let me see if the plate is hot when the server brings me a plate and he's like, it's hot. So I don't know. I've thought about going up there. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't do it. It's definitely going to be unsafe, especially up there where there's a lot of ice, up by the Corbett area, things like that. It gets super icy. It's not like down in Portland where, it's like Portland where it gets icy, but it's like 5 times as much. So just think about that. If you've ever been in Portland when there's an ice storm, it's way, way worse. Gorgeous hike though. Very desolate. Black bears are definitely up there. I've never seen one in all my time. I've talked to people who have hiked and, been living here for like 30 years. They've never even seen a black bear anywhere in Oregon, but keep your eyes out, just keep your wits about you. And that's on any hike. That's not just going up Larch Mountain, but on any hike. Keep your wits about you. There's a $5 charge to park, which I think is the same at the Ape Cave. Sorry, I should have mentioned that before. Most places you should probably bring like at least $10 cash. I would bring like a 5 and a bunch of ones just in case. It's like $7 for some reason, but for the most part, when you do park your car at any of the state places, it's going to be a $5 charge. I heard, I don't think I haven't seen any of them, but I've heard they were talking about putting in debit card dispensers. I don't know if they actually have done that yet, but usually it's like a $5 bill in an envelope. Speaking of that also, let's talk about one other quick thing. I forget what the term is called, but especially during tourist season, like the summer, and when the weather is nice and people are all out at the waterfalls and the gorge, or pretty much any of the like big hikes, there are people who will break into your car. They'll smash the window, take stuff out of your car if you leave valuables in plain sight. The recommendation is to, if you're going to take leave your purse in the car or anything like that, to put it in the trunk, put it under the seats, put anything of value under the seats or in the trunk, and that way you just lower your risk. I would not be surprised if someone still broke into your car, and I'm not saying like it's inevitable that it's going to happen. I'm just saying like even if they didn't see anything in there, I don't know if that would necessarily stop someone who was really intent on breaking in your car, but that is a big problem here, is people smashing windows and getting into cars. So always put your valuables under the seat or in the trunk. And there's actually, it's such a problem that there is a term for it, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but just keep that in mind. Paying for parking made me think about that. Anyway, Larch Mountain, that's an awesome hike, big long one. Definitely don't make that your first one. Just like the Ape Caves, I would definitely get some hikes under my boots before I went and did Larch Mountain, unless you just want to go do like a leg of it and then come back. In that case, totally fine. You'll be going downhill, and whenever you decide that you've gone far enough, turn around, go back uphill to your car, and you're good to go. But don't try doing the whole thing your very first time, or your very first time hiking. This next hike, I would definitely recommend for your very first hike. It is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. I'm kind of biased because I have a few different favorites. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, this one is on Savi Island, and it's to Warrior Rock. And basically what you do is you go on Savi Island, and I think if you're going to go like berry picking, stuff like that, usually you go over the bridge, and then you go left, like past that convenience store there, and then you can go like to the farms or whatever, and you can also go right, and there's farms out there, but I think for the most part people go to the left, and that's where like the bird sanctuary is and stuff like that. But if you go to the right and you just keep going, and I'm pretty sure it's right, you'd want to look it up, don't listen to me, I may not know what I'm talking about, but if you go to the right and you just keep going, I think it's like 9 miles on that road, you eventually get to a dirt road, and then you eventually get to the end of the road, and there's a parking lot there, and there's tons of people there. And little side note, there's also a nude beach right over there. But if you're there for the hike and not for the nude beach, then you park your car. I think it's actually this one might be one of the ones that's like maybe even $10 to park. Don't quote me, look it up before you get there. A lot of the shops around there sell the parking passes, or the day passes I should say, or you can go online. I think you can get like a yearly pass for Savi Island, but that's on you. So this one, you go and you get to the end of that road, or the end of that dirt road, you park, and then you just start the hike. The trail is like right there. There's a porta potty or a couple porta potties, and then like right next to it there's a trail there. That trail goes for about 3 miles. It's all flat. There's like maybe 10 feet of elevation on this trail, and or elevation gain I should say. But it's all along the Columbia River, and it's all awesome. You're basically in the woods. You see a whole bunch of different trees and stuff that are out there. I think, I'm not going to comment on what type of trees they are because I really don't know, but they're not necessarily like forest trees. They might be like oaks, which again, I'm probably wrong. Don't listen to me. But anyway, that's on the one side. Then on the other side, you've got the river. And I have been out here several times, and I have every single time I've seen a bald eagle, at least one. There's a couple of them out there. There's like a sanctuary, I think, out there for them. It is awesome. I don't know. It's just cool to see bald eagles. You don't necessarily get to see those everywhere. So it's one of the things that's really cool about this hike. Parts of the year, this hike is closed down because it gets flooded. You'd have to check beforehand, or just like be smart about it if you get to a spot where it's like pretty flooded. Obviously don't try and trudge across it, just turn around, go back, try at a different time. I think the one I was going was mostly in the middle of summer, and for the most part it was not flooded. All right, so you walk about 3 miles on this trail here. There's a bunch of blackberries, by the way, on this trail also. When it's blackberry season, you can eat blackberries the entire way. It is the best. Anyway, you get to the end and you walk through a little patch of forest, and then boom, all of a sudden you're at a beach, like a beachhead. And there's a lighthouse there. They call it a lighthouse. When I think of a lighthouse, it's not exactly what this is, but it is a lighthouse. There's a light on it, or there used to be anyway. And I think it's called Warrior Rock Lighthouse. And if you go on Google Maps and look up, I believe, Warrior Lighthouse, you'll see where that is, and there'll be a picture of it. And I'm the one who actually added that to Google Maps. So you can either be mad at me or not mad at me, but I'm the one that added that to Google Maps, so I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, it's just this little stone building, or cement building, I guess, and I don't even know if it still is in operation or not, but that's the lighthouse. Don't go out. Some people will be like, oh, have you heard about the lighthouse on Savi Island? And then you'll go, and I don't know, the first time I went, I wasn't necessarily disappointed, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's not a big, huge lighthouse. You can't climb to the top. There's nothing really special about it. It's just like a building there, and it's the end of the hike. I think what's even cooler, though, than the lighthouse is the beach that you end up at. It's a cool, like, sandy beach, and there's usually people hanging out over there. I feel like those people, for the most part, usually end up there on a boat. So it's even cooler when you hike in and you've hiked into the beach as opposed to driven your boat up. I guess I'm not really talking shit about people who have driven their boat, but it's just kind of cool to hike in. Anyway, whenever you're done hanging out on the beach, smoking your bowls, doing whatever you do on the beach, and then you can just turn around, go back the way you came, and it's a nice little 3-mile jaunt back to the car, and that's it. All right, so here is another one that I totally recommend as one of the first hikes you do here. Now, some people may not consider this one a hike, but there is a spot basically downtown Portland, Oregon. And I shouldn't say a spot because you can really start a bunch of different places, but this is how I usually do it. At the waterfront of the Willamette River, there's where like the Saturday market is. That whole waterfront park there, you can basically walk the sidewalk up along the river for a good, I think, mile or two, and maybe even a little bit further than that. But I don't think it's much further than that. If it's even 2 miles, it might even only be like a mile. Anyway, I'm rambling about how long it might be. So, what you can do is you start out pretty much anywhere over there, and I like to park at the parking lot that's right in front of the ship mast. That's the best way to describe it, but it's like an old Navy ship, like lookout tower or whatever. There's a parking lot right there, right on the downtown side. So what I usually do is I park there. There's also one of those like silver bathroom things, like not the porta potties, but the I forget what they're called, but they're like the Portland bathrooms, where they're a lot nicer than porta potties, but anyway, that's where I usually park. Sometimes it's expensive to park there. It depends on what time of year it is. But that's just my favorite spot to park. Don't ask me why. So park there, get out, go walk to the waterfront. So like the sidewalk that's over there. And then you pick. You can go right or left. Doesn't matter. I usually go towards where like Saturday market would be. And I think the Steel Bridge, which I still haven't learned all the names of the bridges here. Oh no, whatever. I'm pretty sure it's the Steel Bridge. And then you can cross over the river over there, which is kind of cool because that bridge, there's a pedestrian path that's a little bit lower, closer to the water. And it's just really cool. Like, it's one of the few times you get like super close to the Willamette River, unless you're actually like walking up to the water, like on a beach or something, I mean, but close to downtown. Anyway, so you walk over the water, then you just go back the other way on the other side and pick any one of the other bridges and walk back over the bridge, back, like, just do a big circle, or a big square, I guess, or big rectangle. And that's it. That's all you do. You just walk, and it's all sidewalk and cement except for a part that's on the dock over on the other side, or if you're going over the bridge. That's it. That's all it is. And it's an awesome hike. I've done this hike on my lunch break before. I've done this hike on a weekend. I've done it rain or shine. It is awesome. And if you know anything about Portland, you can smoke a joint any fucking where you want. I don't know why I just censored myself there, but any fucking place you want. You probably shouldn't. You're supposed to do it at your house, but man, I've smoked weed all over fucking Portland. Like, 3 different times, and knock on wood, 3 different times, I've walked by a cop as I'm like smoking a joint, or I like just puffed on a bowl and I'm like blowing it out. The cops here, to be fair, they were all bike cops, so I don't know if they're actually real cops or not. I mean, cops are awesome. I'm not like talking shit or anything, but no one said anything. No one gave a fuck. So anyway, you can smoke bowls along this one. Nobody fucking cares. Don't be an asshole about it. Don't blow it in people's faces. Don't be obvious about it. But like, you can smoke weed and walk around the fucking downtown like waterfront the entire time. It's so cool. That one, I'm not going to say it this time, but okay, fuck it. I am going to say it. That is one of my favorite hikes, the downtown hike. I don't know what else to call it. There is a name for it, but basically like over the bridge, just doing that little loop, and you can make it as long or as short as you want. You can do just a tiny little one where you just go over one bridge, walk to the next one, go over that one, and that's a super short hike. Or you can be ballsy as hell, go all the way to the Steel Bridge, all the way down to, I think, the Ross Island Bridge, but that's a big long fucking hike. That one I think is going to be a good like 13-14 miles if you do that big loop. And there's spots where like when you go down, like I think it's McLaughlin Boulevard is where you would have to start walking down to like get to one of the other bridges. It's going to be tough. Like the furthest you can go, I think, out is basically where I would recommend anyway, is the bridge right before like Ross Island. And you'll be able to figure it out. Just play it by ear, play it by eye, I guess would be another way to do it. Just kind of eyeball it and don't overexert yourself. And I guess worst case scenario, if you're in downtown or like you're close to downtown, I've even done this with my daughter before. We tried to do the whole like Ross Island one and fucked up, and then just called an Uber and Ubered it back to the car. So there's that. Not a whole lot you really need to bring with you on this one. Except obviously some parking money. I sometimes don't even bring my my pack with me on that one. You don't really need to bring your pack. Maybe there's even drinking fountains around. Like it's just super cool. I can't talk enough about that downtown hike. I love downtown Portland. It's one of my favorite spots in the world. I could spend days down there without leaving. So there's that. All right, enough about the downtown hike. The next one I'm going to talk about is one hike that kicked my ass. And this is not one of my favorite hikes. And as a matter of fact, this is probably my least favorite hike that I've ever done. And fuck this hike. And I'm going to come back this year and do this hike again. And it's probably going to kick my ass again, and I'm going to be pissed. But this is Angel's Rest. Sometimes it's referred to as Devil's Rest. Sometimes it's Angel/Devil's Rest, whatever the fuck. Angel's Rest is where I went to. So this is out in the Columbia Gorge, and it is a motherfucker. There's so much elevation gain on this one. To be fair, I didn't feel very good the day I went. I didn't really eat right before I left. I ate a power bar that gave me heartburn. Like right when I kicked off on the hike, I got heartburn. I almost stopped immediately and turned around and went back. And these are all the things that kind of made me dislike this hike, but I want to talk about it anyway. It may not be that bad of a hike. It's just this particular time I've only gone once, and like I said, it kicked my ass. So got heartburn, didn't feel good. It was hot as fuck. It was like the hottest day of the year last year when I decided to go do it. I think it was like high 90s, which really isn't that hot. I came from Phoenix. I'm like, whatever, high 90s I can deal with all day, every day. But it was way humid out. And it was the high 90s. And I just wasn't feeling good. So I almost turned around right away because of the heartburn. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to trudge through it. And I got like, I think 3/4 of the way through the hike. And I just, oh man, something happened. Like, I got sick to my stomach. I felt like I was probably getting like dehydrated or maybe sunstroke or heat stroke or something, which I feel like a silly bitch because I came from Phoenix and I've never gotten heat stroke in Phoenix, and I've walked around a lot of Phoenix before in like 110-degree weather. I've stood outside in the sun before waiting for a bus for like a half hour. Never had anything there happen to me, but for some reason I go and do this Angel's Rest hike, and like I said, it just kicked the shit out of me. So I was so close. I even think I did turn around for a minute, and I like walked back down the hill a little bit, and then I was like, no, fuck it, I think I can make it, because I know I'm right at the end of this hike. And I did. I finished it. I went all the way out to Angel's Rest, which is this cool little outcrop, and it was worth it. It's got a really cool view up there. I'm glad I finished it up because I was real close to the end. And it's got, like I said, a cool lookout up there. Some people get stuck up there. I don't really know how. I didn't really go out to the very end of the outcrop, though. I just kind of went out and was like, okay, cool, that's what it is, and then walked back. But some people get stuck up there, so be careful wherever you're climbing up or going to. If you go up to Angel's Rest, apparently that's a thing. I don't know. I couldn't see how it would happen, but again, I didn't go out to the very end, so who knows. Just don't be a dipshit. Search and rescue has a whole bunch of stuff to do in the summertime, a whole bunch of people to rescue. And if you're a dipshit and climb up on a rock that you can't get down off of because you're a dipshit, they're gonna have to come and they're gonna have to come and help you. So don't be a dipshit. Anyway, that's enough about that. I'm sorry I called you a dipshit, but you know what I mean. Don't be a dipshit. So that's Angel's Rest. I did not like that hike, but I am going to go back this year, and I'm going to kick the shit out of this hike. I'm going to do it again. Maybe it'll kick the shit out of me, but I feel like a bitch because I did it last year, and it almost rocked me. Devil's Rest is a little bit further than Angel's Rest up the hill. From what I understand, it's not even worth it. There's nothing special about Devil's Rest except that it is a little bit further up the hill, but there's no lookout or anything. It's just a spot where you're like, oh, I went all the way to Devil's Rest. It's just like a notch in your belt. There's really nothing cool about it from what I understand. I never went out that far. I might do it this year. I don't know, but that's the other one. And they're both on the same path. So if you hear Devil's Rest or you hear Angel's Rest, they're all on the same. They're both on the same path. All right, next one, Cape Lookout, which is a state park. It's out on the coast. It's the only coast hike that I've done, and it is fucking awesome. And I actually didn't even do Cape Lookout. So I went with my girlfriend, and I feel like it was like our anniversary or something. It was just her and I. It might not have been our anniversary. We might have just done it because the kid was out of town or something. But it was fucking awesome. Okay, so Cape Lookout State Park. Super cool hike. We didn't even go to the actual lookout. We went down the beach path, which was just a big switchback trail, basically, that took you down to the beach. Super awesome. And then we took it back up to the car. That's pretty much all there was. It was an awesome hike, super pretty, and then the ocean obviously is down at the bottom, so you got that. The actual lookout part is what most people go for, and I think it's like a 3-mile hike. You walk out to the end of this big long rock outcrop, and people go out there and go like whale watching and stuff. I can't really speak a whole lot on that part. Obviously, I didn't go on that part. I imagine it would be super awesome. I can tell you that the coast is definitely colder than here in Portland. It was definitely windy the day we went. However, once you got closer to, well, I shouldn't even say once you got closer. Once you got about halfway down the trail, for the switchback trail down to the beach, it definitely was less windy, but then you get out to the beach and it's super windy again. So just keep that in mind, a windbreaker, and it's going to be a little colder. And usually it rains a lot more there on the coast than it does here in Portland also. So keep that in mind. Um, Not a whole lot to talk about at Cape Lookout. I've only been to the coast that one time to hike. I would love to go again, do other ones. But that one is super cool. And like I said, I didn't even go to the actual lookout. We went down to the beach, which is an awesome alternative. I think we ended up flipping a coin on it, and that's why we went down to the beach instead of going out to the lookout. Wish I had more to say about the coast or Cape Lookout, but if I didn't mention the coast, I know I'd be remiss since I did go to the coast, and I know a lot of people do go to the coast to hike. But maybe we'll have more to talk about the coast on a different episode. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is Forest Park, and there's a couple of different trails in Forest Park that you can do. As a matter of fact, there's like hundreds of different trails in Forest Park you can do. As a matter of fact, that's all Forest Park is for the most part. There's a bunch of trails that you can go hiking on. Forest Park is the shit. Okay, so first of all, there's the Wildwood Trail, which I've only been on like a little leg of the Wildwood Trail before, and then hit it a couple of times on some of the other like hikes that I've done, but I've never hiked the Wildwood Trail. The Wildwood Trail is like 30 miles long. And it might only be like 20 miles, but I think it's like 30 miles long. It goes from like basically downtown all the way out to Savi Island. It is a beast. I don't even know what to say. I've never been on it, but it's so long and so crazy, and you would have to do it either in legs, or you'd have to camp, or you'd have to hike overnight, or start super early in the morning and like run it. I don't even know how you would do it, but it's like 30 miles long. So that's the Wildwood Trail. That's probably the most famous trail in Forest Park, or the most well-known trail in Forest Park. I would love to do it. I would love to do the whole thing, but I haven't really decided how I'm going to do the Wildwood. But that doesn't matter because I've done a bunch of other ones in Forest Park. And like I said, I did like a mile or two on like from Germantown Road to some spot on that trail, and then just turned around and went back. We were out volunteering with the Forest Park Conservancy, and like clearing the trail. So that's why I was on it there. And that part is over by like the St. John's Bridge. And I would definitely recommend it. It was super pretty over there, just like all of Forest Park is. I think the first one I technically did at Forest Park was the McCleary Trail, which starts out at like McCleary Park, and then you can walk it all the way to the Piddick Mansion, although you can take it to a bunch of different spots, or you can take it to a different trail. I think there's like endless trails you can do in Forest Park. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you actually look at a map of Forest Park and all the different trails on it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's big. But the first one I ever did was McCleary Trail all the way out to Piddick Mansion, which was awesome. It was a really cool hike. Out in the woods, for the most part. I feel like there was some streams, just some water along it, and there's a lot of elevation gain. I did it in like the dead of summer, so there was and I did it on a day where it was like super nice out, so it was super busy. So always keep that in mind. On a rainy day or a day where it's not so nice out in Portland, you're gonna have a lot less foot traffic on the trails. So pros and cons to going when the weather is nice versus not nice. Again, I've only done that one once. Super cool hike, and I would recommend it. However, there are other ones that I think are just as cool, if not cooler, than that McCleary to Piddick Mansion, like the Washington Park to Piddick Mansion or Washington Park to the Rose Garden. Those are two of my favorite spots. And basically it goes like this. Washington Park kind of starts out like up by the zoo, and like that top part, like, there's a big parking lot up there. The zoo, the Arboretum, the Children's Museum, I think, is all up there, and then there's that elevator you can take down to the max and back up to the top of the hill or whatever to Washington Park, and it's where the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is. So if you start out there, you can, if you start out at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, you can get to a few different spots in Forest Park. And I recommend, if the grass is green, to take a roll down that hill. It's a super awesome hill to roll down, especially if you have kids. Take them down there, let them roll down. It's an awesome spot. We usually refer to it as the Rolly Hill as opposed to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which now that I think about is kind of dick, but I don't mean it like that. We call it the Rolly Hill because we've gone rolling down it a bunch of times. Anyway, if you know what I'm talking about, if you've been out there, it's the Rolly Hill. It also starts out in the spiral. And it's kind of cool to start at the bottom of the spiral, start walking up, and then that'll actually take you to the trails. So once you get to the trails, there's a whole bunch of them back in there, but basically they all kind of start out. If you start in that spot, they all kind of go to the same little area, and you can cross over. I'm not even sure what street that is. It might be Burnside, or it might whatever it is. Doesn't matter. I don't know why I said Burnside. I don't think it's Burnside. I think there's a sign there that says to Burnside, but that's beside the point. Anyway, you can follow the trail and you can go one way, which will take you to the Rose Garden, and out to like the Japanese gardens and stuff like that. Or you can go a different way and that'll take you out to PDX Mansion. Both ways are cool. You can even all do it in one day, like walk from Washington Park to the PDX Mansion, walk back to the spot where it splits off, and then go over to the to the Rose Garden, and just kind of make like a touristy day out of it. It's gonna be a lot of hiking, but it'd be a cool thing to do. So the Rose Garden, especially when it's in bloom, is something to behold. It is really cool up there. I think it's like the biggest collection of or it's the biggest test garden in the world. And that might not be true, so let's just act like it is. I don't know why. Anyway, I think it's the biggest test garden there is in the world. But in any case, there's a ton of roses there. It's a cool place to go hang out, especially when it's in bloom. There's a German dude that has like a food cart up there. It's not really a food cart, but it's like a snack cart. And I always stop and get like a chai or a frozen lemonade or something when I'm on this hike and it's a hot day out. So there's that. And then if you go the other way to the PDX Mansion, it's the PDX Mansion. If you don't know what the PDX Mansion is, it's I think it was like the first rich settlers, founders of Portland, something like that. You know, honestly, I don't really know the history of it, but it's a big ass house. And it's on the top of this hill. It's got a super cool lookout over the city and downtown. And they do tours there. I think it costs a couple of bucks, or you can donate to do the tour and learn a little bit of the history. Obviously, I've never done the tour because I don't know the history. But I've been up there a couple of times to look out because it's cool up there. They have a big grassy lawn where you can hang out. I've walked up there with the dog before, and like we've hung out on the lawn and eaten lunch or whatever, and then walked back to the car. It's a cool little spot. Even if you're not doing a hike, it's cool to drive up there and go take a look at PDX Mansion and see what it's all about. There is also a bus up there. So if you started out at Washington Park or the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and walked to one of those two places, I believe PDX Mansion has a bus as well, but I know for a fact the Rose Garden does, or the Japanese Garden, same thing. They're like right across the street from each other. Anyway, you can bus it back, or you can bus it downtown. You can go back to where that elevator is and go down to the Max and then hop on the Max and get pretty much anywhere you need to go. So if you do start hiking and you're like, man, this sucks, I don't want to keep going, and you get to one of those places, you can just take the bus back instead of hiking back. There's tons of undiscovered stuff, for me anyway, at Forest Park. I have definitely not traversed the entire thing. I've been to parts of it and only very small parts of it too. There are a ton of trails there. There's the Winter Garden, which is part, if you're going to the Rose Garden from Washington Park, you'll have to walk through the Winter Garden, which, I mean, as you can guess, is in bloom in the winter. But it's a cool little spot, cool little hangout. Usually not a whole lot of people there. And you're also walking through the Arboretum the whole time too if you're going to that Rose Garden destination. So you get to see a whole bunch of different flora as you walk and kind of learn about the different trees, I guess. I don't know if you're necessarily learning about them, but you get to see what they look like and see a sign screwed to them that says what they are. All right, so that's Forest Park. The final hike I'm going to talk about is Silver Creek Falls, or Silver Creek State Park, I think is what it might be called. But Silver Creek Falls is how I referred to it as. And it is the 7 waterfalls or 9 waterfalls destination. It's close to Silverton. It's down by like Salem. I think it's more like 45 minutes away from Salem, but it's a little bit further south. But this was the first hike I ever did in Oregon. And is one of my favorites. You can do, so this one's kind of a bitch. There, pretty much wherever you start from, there's gonna be a big long walk down, or you're gonna go down a lot in elevation down to the creek. And then you hike along the creek and you go see the different waterfalls. And then eventually, obviously, whenever you go down, that inevitably means you'll have to come back up. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're doing like a 4 or 7 mile hike. Like, it's going to be a pain in the ass to get back up to the top. And like I said, this is the very first hike I did out here. And this was when I was coming to visit one time that we came and did this. And I wore some heavy ass boots. And it sucked by the end of it. I was not prepped to do this one at all. Make sure you're prepped. I would say if you're going to go do a tiny portion of it, you could probably make it your first hike out here. But other than that, I would say maybe save this one for a couple of hikes in. But it's super pretty, tons of waterfalls. You get to walk behind some of the waterfalls, which is really cool. It's very humid in there, but not like uncomfortably humid. It's hard to describe. You can definitely tell that there's like moisture in the air, but it's a temperate rainforest in there, like in that area. So anyway, there's definitely a little bit of humidity. Keep that in mind. Dress for the occasion. Silver Creek Falls. Again, you can take a gander online, do a little bit of research before you actually go. Super cool destination, though. I totally recommend it. Super busy in the peak season. A lot of tourists there. A lot of tourists who will just walk down to one waterfall, walk back up, drive to the next one, so on and so forth. But if you do the hike, you can avoid a lot of them by just doing the hike, because not everyone hikes it. When salmon berries are in season, there are a ton of salmon berries by the main fall. I don't know what it's called, and I wouldn't want to like take a guess at it because there's a few different waterfalls over there, but like the main like huge one where the parking and stuff is at, if you start doing the hike from there and it's salmon berry season, you can pick salmon berries. They're the orange ones. They're delicious. Check them out. All right, so Silver Creek Falls. I mean, that was the last one I had on my list. Some of the hikes I plan on doing this summer, I want to try out Angel's Rest again. Since that one kicked my ass before, I want to see if I can actually get it done. And without it kicking my ass, I'm probably going to go on a nicer day, not when it's 100 degrees out. I don't know if I'm going to this summer, but I'd really like to do the hike around Hood, Mount Hood, that is. And that's like a 4-day hike. You have to gather water while you're out on the trail. It's supposed to be super awesome. That's all I really know about it, aside from the actual path. I have an email about it, so I'll try and post that as well. But that's really one of the ones that I'd like to do, and then I'd like to go up and down Larch this year to like do the whole 14 miles. So those are some of the ones that I have like a goal to do this year, and I think we're going to do the Ape Caves at some point again this year too, which was a super cool one. But yeah, it's the ones that I know about or the ones that I've done that I wanted to talk about. If you know any, definitely post some and let us know about it, or ones that you're interested in or want to learn more about, or if you find like some super secret one that you want to talk about, or anything like that, definitely let me know. I think that's all I can talk about as far as hiking goes. Next time we'll talk about a different subject, but this time, and we might even have enough material to go and do another one about hiking. But yeah, that's about it. See you next time.